The station was quiet. In the silence of deep space, only the soft hum of engines and the distant vibration of life support systems broke the stillness. Elias lay on his bunk, half asleep. Staring at the faint glow of the ceiling lights that mimicked a night sky, he was used to this emptiness. The orbital research station around Kepler 9 was his post for the last 6 months. It was not glamorous, no battles, no grand discoveries, only long hours of data collection, checking atmospheric readings, and monitoring signals from nearby moons. For him, the greatest adventure of the day was whether the food dispenser gave him soup or something closer to sludge. But on this particular night, something unusual stirred. The door to his quarters hissed open with the faintest whisper. Elias blinked, sitting up quickly. The station was secure. No one should enter without clearance. He reached for the small utility torch on the desk, his heart beating a little faster. In the dimness, a figure slipped inside. The form was slender, graceful, and silent. At first, Elias thought it was a human technician, perhaps lost or confused. But as his eyes adjusted, he realized this was not a human at all. The figure wore long, layered garments that shimmered faintly under the weak light. The fabric looked strange, woven from threads that caught reflections like flowing water. Slowly, carefully, the figure pulled at the clasps and let the outer layers fall to the floor. What lay beneath took Elias's breath away. Her skin was dark, yet alive with glowing patterns, lines of soft blue and silver that pulsed gently like constellations drawn across her body. She seemed more like a living starfield than a person. Her breathing was unsteady, her movements fragile. Before Elias could speak, she staggered forward and collapsed onto his chest. He caught her instinctively, surprised by how light she felt. She trembled, as if every step she had taken had cost her more strength than she could afford. Hey, easy, Elias whispered, though he knew she might not understand him. His voice was calm, but his mind raced. Who was she? How did she bypass station security? Her head rested against him. He could feel the faint vibration of her pulse, quick, uneven, almost desperate. And then he noticed something even stranger. His own heart rate, which had been racing with alarm, began to slow. The moment she touched him, an unusual calm spread through his body. It was as if her presence balanced his very nerves. For long minutes, Elias did not move. He only held her, uncertain what to do. Should he call security? Should he report this intrusion? Or should he wait and see why she had come to him of all people? Finally, she stirred. Her voice was soft, musical, but weak. Safe. She whispered, the word accented, but clear enough to understand. Elias blinked. She knew his language. You want safety? He asked quietly. She gave the smallest nod, her glowing patterns dimming as if exhaustion drained their light. Her body seemed to sink further into him, as though his very presence gave her something she lacked. The station's artificial night cycle continued outside. Beyond the walls, stars drifted endlessly. Inside, Elias found himself holding a being unlike any he had ever seen. For the next half hour, Elias remained still, his mind turning over possibilities. He had read about her kind before only in passing, through vague research reports. Her people were called Leora's kin, though their true name in their own language was impossible to pronounce. They were known to be allies, distant but respected, rarely seen in human territories. Encounters were few, and no one spoke of them arriving unannounced like this. She shifted slightly, whispering again. Danger. Outside? Could not stay. Elias leaned closer, trying to catch her fading words. Danger? From who? From what? Her eyes, bright, reflective, almost liquid in appearance, looked up at him briefly. He felt a weight in that gaze, as though she carried more than just exhaustion. There was fear. There was urgency. But then her eyes closed again. She did not answer. Elias exhaled slowly. He felt trapped between duty and instinct. As a station officer, his responsibility was clear. Report immediately, alert security, and keep order. But as a human being, something in him resisted. She had come to him, not to anyone else. She had chosen his quarters. She had asked for safety. And he could not bring himself to betray that trust, not yet. He gently adjusted her position so she lay comfortably across his chest, her breathing steady against him. The glow of her markings flickered faintly, like fading starlight. The hours passed slowly. Elias did not sleep. He watched her, listened to her breathing, and wondered what story she carried that forced her into his room. At one point, carefully reached for the discarded garments on the floor. They were not clothes in the human sense, but rather protective coverings, woven with strange symbols. He noticed fine tears along the fabric, signs of struggle, perhaps escape. It was clear she had not come peacefully through official channels. And then, as the station's artificial morning cycle began, a soft chime sounded outside his quarters. A security patrol, making routine rounds. Elias froze. If they checked inside, they would find her instantly. He looked down at the alien woman. She was still asleep, her head against him, trusting him without question. His heart raced again. He could call them in, solve the problem in an instant. Or he could keep her hidden, risking punishment if discovered. Elias made his choice quickly. He reached over, switched off the interior lights, and lay back down as though still asleep. The patrol passed by, their footsteps echoing faintly, then fading into silence. Only when the sound was gone did he release his breath. He glanced at her again, realizing the weight of what he had done. By protecting her, he had just stepped outside the line of protocol. And yet, strangely, he felt no regret. When she woke again, hours later, her eyes opened more fully. The glow of her markings had returned slightly, no longer as dim. "You helped me," she said softly, her voice fragile but clearer. Elias gave a faint, almost nervous smile. "Well, you didn't exactly give me a choice. You nearly collapsed on me." She tilted her head, not fully understanding the humor, but her gaze softened. She placed a trembling hand against his chest, where his heartbeat pulsed steadily. "Human," she whispered. "Strong heart. Always steady." I needed it. Elias felt a chill. She had not simply fallen onto him by accident. She had needed him specifically. Not just a place to hide, but a human to lean on. He asked carefully, "Why me? Why here?" She hesitated, then whispered a word that made his skin prickle. "Because only humans can help now." Her voice faded again, but the weight of that single sentence echoed inside Elias's mind. He knew, in that moment, that his quiet days of routine and data checks were over. Something larger, something dangerous, had just entered his life, and it all began with her slipping into his room, dropping her strange garments, and lying across his chest, carrying secrets that could change everything. The artificial morning cycle of the station brightened the walls with a soft, golden glow, imitating sunlight. Elias sat upright on the edge of his bunk, staring at the figure resting nearby. She was no longer lying across his chest, but had shifted to the corner of the bed, curled like someone trying to protect herself from unseen shadows. Her glowing patterns pulsed faintly again. They were steadier now, less erratic than the night before. Elias studied them with curiosity. They weren't random. The shapes reminded him of constellations he'd once seen in navigation charts. Was it possible that her body itself carried some kind of star map? Before he could think further, her eyes opened. "Those strange, liquid-like orbs fixed on him. You did not call them," she whispered. Elias gave a slow nod. "No, I didn't." She looked at him for a long moment. Relief softened her tense face. She let out a slow breath, almost like a sigh of gratitude. "Why?" she asked, because Elias replied carefully, "You asked me for safety, and I believed you." There was silence. The hum of the engines filled the air. At last she straightened, though her movements were still weak. She pressed one glowing hand against the wall for balance. Her patterns brightened slightly, as though her strength was returning. "My name is Leora," she said softly. Elias repeated it. Leora. It felt unusual on his tongue, but it suited her. She gave a slight nod. "You are Elias," frowned. "How do you know that?" I hear the station systems, she explained, her accent thick but understandable. Your name appears often in logs. That detail made Elias uneasy. If she could read into the systems, how much did she already know? But he kept his voice calm. Then maybe you can tell me why you're here. Why risk everything to come into my room? Her gaze lowered, and her patterns dimmed. She seemed to wrestle with herself. Finally, she spoke. There is a storm, she said quietly. A great wave from a dying star. It will cross this sector soon. Very soon, Elias blinked. A stellar shockwave? She nodded slowly. Yes, stronger than you imagine. Strong enough to burn fleets, silence stations, and wipe worlds. His chest tightened. He had studied stellar events before supernova remnants. Gamma bursts, but what she described sounded catastrophic. If that's true, why hasn't the Council warned us? Why hasn't Command said anything? Her expression grew heavy. Because my people will not. They will protect themselves only. They will let the wave destroy what it touches. The words struck Elias like a physical blow. He tried to process them. The Council had always been seen as distant but fair. To think they would deliberately keep such knowledge secret, it was hard to believe, you're saying, Elias began slowly, that humanity will be left to die. Yes, she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with a strange determination. Unless you act, Elias stared at her. A part of him wanted to reject it, to say she was mistaken or lying. But something in her tone, in the way her markings pulsed with every word, told him otherwise. And why me? He asked finally. Why not tell the station commander? Or send a broadcast? Why come to me, a simple officer hidden in the middle of the night? Leora closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there was pain in them, but also trust. Because humans are different, she said softly. Your leaders might hesitate, but you take risks. You break rules when you must. You survive where others surrender. She touched her chest lightly. My people, we forgot courage. We live by councils and laws. We wait for permission. But you, she reached out, pressing her hand gently against his chest again, feeling his steady heartbeat. You move. You adapt. You fight even when logic says it is impossible. Elias was silent. He didn't think of himself as anything special. He was just one officer in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. But hearing those words, seeing the desperation in her face, stirred something deep inside him. He asked, almost in a whisper, What do you need me to do? Leora's markings flared brighter, as though answering the question before her lips did. I carry the map, she said. It is written into me. Coordinates of places hidden where shelter is possible, but I cannot reach them alone. I am hunted. Already they search for me, to silence what I know. Elias felt the weight of her words settle over him. He remembered the faint tears in her garments, the exhaustion in her steps. She had not come here freely. She had escaped something. If they'd catch you, Elias said slowly, they'll erase the truth. She nodded once, solemnly. Yes, the door chime startled them both. Elias jumped, motioning for silence. Someone stood outside his quarters. Officer Elias, a voice called. It was Lieutenant Varen, part of the security team. Routine check. Open your door, Elias's heart pounded. If they saw Leora, it was over. He glanced at her quickly. She understood immediately. With surprising speed for someone so weak, she slipped back into the corner of his bunk, pulling the discarded garments around her glowing body to dim the light. She crouched low, almost invisible in the shadow. Elias inhaled slowly, then pressed the door release. The panel slid open and Varen stepped inside, holding a datapad. Morning, Elias. Everything normal in here? Elias forced a casual smile. As normal as it gets on this rock. I was just getting ready to start my shift. Varen nodded, glancing around briefly. His gaze lingered near the bed for a moment, but then he shrugged. We're doing a sweep. Some strange energy readings last night, nothing serious, but Command wants everything checked. Energy readings, Elias repeated, keeping his tone light. Yeah, Could have been a glitch in the system. Still, protocol says we confirm. Varen tapped the datapad, scanning the room. A soft beep confirmed nothing unusual. He gave Elias a nod. All clear here. See you at mess later? Sure, Elias said, keeping his smile steady. When the door finally slid shut behind Varen, Elias released the breath he had been holding. Leora emerged from the shadow slowly, her eyes wide. You risked much, she whispered. Elias rubbed his forehead. Yeah, and I think I just signed myself up for something bigger than I ever imagined. Later, as the station settled into its daily routine, Elias and Leora spoke again. She told him more, though her voice often trembled. The wave will come within weeks, she said. I do not know exactly when, but the Council knows. They plan to retreat their fleets to safety zones, leaving colonies and stations to burn. And these shelters you mentioned, Elias asked. They are old places, Leora explained. Remnants from when the first explorers crossed the void. Hidden inside dead worlds, buried beneath asteroids, built to survive stellar storms. My ancestors kept the knowledge, but it was forbidden to share. Her markings glowed as she traced patterns across her arm. Each glowing line shifted, forming new shapes, coordinates, maps, signals Elias could not fully read. It was beautiful, like watching starlight being painted on living skin. You can lead us there, Elias murmured. Yes, she said, but I cannot escape alone. My strength fades. My people will hunt me. Only humans can take the risk. Elias looked at her for a long time. He had always thought of himself as ordinary. Yet here was someone from another world, trusting him with a truth that could decide the fate of countless lives. Finally, he said quietly, Then I'll help you. We'll find a way. It was small, fragile, but real. That night, Elias could not sleep. He kept replaying her words in his head. Only humans can help now. The research station had once felt like a forgotten outpost, irrelevant to the galaxy. But suddenly, his room had become the center of something vast and dangerous. And deep down, Elias knew this was only the beginning. The next day felt heavier than any Elias had known aboard the station. He walked through the narrow halls, carrying his datapad as if nothing were unusual, yet inside his chest, a storm raged. Every crew member he passed seemed to watch him too closely. Every routine check seemed sharper, and every door hiss sounded louder. Back in his quarters, Leora remained hidden. He had asked her not to move until he returned from his shift. She had agreed, but he had seen the worry in her eyes. She did not like waiting. She did not like hiding. Elias sat through meetings, filled reports, and listened to command officers speak of minor anomalies in the system scans. None mentioned a stellar wave. None hinted at danger. If what Leora said was true, then the Council had already hidden the truth from them. The thought made Elias's stomach tighten. When his shift ended, Elias hurried back to his room. He keyed the door closed and leaned against it with a long breath. She was there, sitting quietly on the edge of the bunk. Her glowing markings shifted slowly like drifting constellations. She lifted her eyes to him the moment he entered, and he felt the same strange calm he had felt the night before you returned. She said softly, Of course I did, Elias replied, trying to smile. I told you I wouldn't leave you. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the hum of the engines filling the silence. Then Leora spoke again. Did you learn anything? Elias shook his head. Nothing. Command is keeping everything quiet. They're either ignoring it or hiding it. She closed her eyes, her shoulders slumping. Then it is true. They will not act. Her despair was so deep that Elias moved closer without thinking. He sat beside her, his voice firm. Then we act. You said you have the coordinates, right? The shelters, the hidden places. Her eyes opened, shining faintly. Yes, but the maps are not simple. They live inside me, passed down, carried in our blood, written in light. To share them, I must show, not tell. Elias frowned. Show me then. She hesitated, looking at him with an expression that was almost fear. If I show you, I give you everything. No one outside my kind has ever seen. Once you know, You cannot unknow. If I am wrong about you." Her voice trailed off. She looked away. Elias studied her in silence. He saw the tension in her shoulders, the weight she carried, and the way her glowing markings pulsed with unease. He realized this was not only about survival. For her, this was trust given to a stranger from another species. He spoke softly. "Leora, you came here because you believed in humans. You believed we would take risks, that we wouldn't just follow rules while people died. If you trusted me enough to step into my room last night, then you can trust me now." Her eyes met his again. They held there for a long moment. Slowly, she nodded. "Then look," she whispered. She lifted her hand, placing it gently against his chest where his heartbeat pulsed strong and steady. Her markings brightened, and lines of light crawled up her arm, across her shoulder, and down her neck. Elias stared in awe as the patterns shifted and formed shapes, circles, arcs, and star lines. They floated faintly in the air between them, projected like a living hologram from her very skin. It was breathtaking. A map of the stars, drawn in moving light, appeared before his eyes. Coordinates shifted, systems lit up, and then several points glowed brighter than the rest. "These," she whispered, pointing to the brightest points, "are shelters. Some in hollow moons, some inside rock worlds, some built long ago in forgotten stations. They were made to survive storms such as the one that comes now." Elias's breath caught. "There are so many. Yes, enough to save many lives. But only if the people know where to go." He reached out carefully as though touching the light would make it vanish. "You've been carrying this inside you all this time." She nodded, lowering her hand slowly. The map dimmed and faded, turning into her skin until only her soft glow remained. "This is why I am hunted," she said quietly. "If the council learns I showed you this, they will call me traitor. They will erase me." Elias clenched his fists. "Then we won't let them." She tilted her head, watching him. Her expression softened. "You speak as though it is simple, isn't it?" Elias admitted. "But if what you say is true, then hiding isn't an option. People need to know. Humans won't just sit still and wait to die. We'll move. We'll fight." A faint smile touched her lips, fragile but real. "This is why I chose you." That evening, Elias made his first real risk. He left his quarters with his datapad, but instead of reporting to command, he slipped into one of the maintenance shafts. The narrow tunnels stretched behind the walls like veins, carrying wires and conduits. Few people bothered with them except engineers, which made them perfect for avoiding eyes. Leora followed close behind. She had wrapped herself in a dull gray fabric Elias found in storage, which helped hide her glowing markings. But in the dimness of the shafts, faint light still leaked from her skin. Elias walked ahead, blocking her from view whenever they passed a vent. "Where do we go?" she whispered. "There's a relay hub near the lower decks," Elias replied quietly. "If I can reach it, I can send a message encrypted hidden. Maybe I can send the map to someone outside before command cuts me off." They moved carefully, the hum of machinery around them. Elias's heart beat faster with every step. If they were caught here, it would not be easy to explain. At one point, a distant clang echoed through the shaft. Leora froze, her markings dimming almost to nothing. Elias held up his hand, listening. Footsteps. Someone was in the tunnels quickly. He motioned for her to follow, crawling into a narrow side passage. They pressed themselves against the wall as a pair of engineers passed by. Carrying tools and muttering about power fluctuations, Elias did not move until their voices faded. Only then did he let out the breath he had been holding. He glanced at Leora, who was still pressed close, her wide eyes fixed on him. "You risk much," she whispered again. Echoing the words she had spoken before, Elias gave a faint, tense smile. "Yeah, I'm starting to get used to it." They reached the relay hub after nearly an hour. It was a small chamber filled with consoles, blinking lights, and transmission arrays. Elias quickly set his datapad into the system, fingers flying across the screen. "I can mask the signal," he explained. "If I send short bursts instead of a full transmission, command won't notice right away." What? Leora stood close, watching the data scroll across the screen. Who will you send it to? Anyone who will listen, Elias said. Freighters, outposts, colonies. Once the truth is out, they can't hide it anymore. But just as he prepared to send the first burst, an alarm sounded. A sharp, piercing tone filled the hub. Ilias's stomach dropped. They've detected us, he said quickly. Security will be here in minutes. Leora's markings flared with alarm. We must run. Ilias pulled the datapad free, shutting down the console. No, we can't leave yet. I got part of the data through, maybe enough. But now we need to disappear before they find us. The sound of boots echoed faintly from the corridor outside. Leora stepped closer, her voice urgent but steady. Then trust me as I trusted you. She placed her glowing hand against his, and suddenly the lights of the console flickered strangely. For a brief moment, every system in the room dimmed. Elias realized she was interfering with the electronics somehow, bending the signals to confuse them. Go, she whispered. While they cannot track, Elias grabbed her hand, and together they slipped back into the tunnels. By the time they reached his quarters again, both were breathless. Leora collapsed onto the bunk, her glow dim with exhaustion. Elias paced the room, clutching the datapad tightly. We didn't finish, he muttered. I only got a fraction of the data out. Not enough. She looked up at him weakly. But enough to plant doubt. Enough for others to ask questions. Once questions begin, truth spreads. You humans are very good at that. Leah stopped pacing. He stared at her, then gave a short laugh. You really do believe in us, don't you? I must, she said softly. Because if I do not, then all is already lost. Her words hung in the air. Elias sat beside her, the datapad heavy in his hand. He knew the road ahead was growing more dangerous. The Council would not ignore this. Command would begin searching for intruders. And soon, he would not only be protecting Leora, he would be protecting humanity's only chance to survive. As he looked at her, lying weak but determined on his bunk, Elias realized something. The secret she carried was not just the map. It was the belief that humans, with their stubbornness and courage, could do what no council ever would, and for her sake he would prove her right. The next day began with tension running like electricity through the station. Elias felt it the moment he stepped out of his quarters. The halls, normally filled with the quiet hum of routine, now buzzed with whispers and hurried footsteps. Security officers walked in pairs, scanning every corridor with handheld sensors. Strange energy readings, they called them. Unregistered signals. Elias knew better. They had detected the burst he had tried to send with Leora. The Council might not yet know the full truth. But Command had noticed something unusual. They were searching, and soon they would find her. He returned to his quarters as quickly as he could. Leora sat waiting, her markings faint but steady, her expression calm. They are searching for me, she said softly, reading his face before he spoke. Yes, Elias replied grimly. They're checking every room, scanning for whatever it is that makes you glow. She lowered her gaze. Then I cannot hide much longer. They will find me. Not if I move you, Elias said firmly. He leaned closer, lowering his voice though they were alone. There's a shuttle bay at the far end of the station. If we can get there, I might be able to launch us out. Away from here, away from Command. We'll figure the rest after. Leora studied him. Her eyes were sharp, though her body was weak. It will not be easy. They will watch the bays, Elias said. But I'm not letting them take you. Not after everything you've risked. For the first time since he met her, Leora placed her hand on his shoulder, not out of weakness but in strength. Then we must go, Elias prepared carefully. He packed his datapad, a ration kit, and a small toolkit in a bag. He found a dull gray maintenance cloak for Leora to wear, though her markings still glimmered faintly beneath the fabric. When she pulled the hood up, she almost looked like a human engineer moving through the station. Almost they left quietly through a service behind his quarters. Elias led her into the maintenance tunnels again, narrow and dim, filled with the low hum of wires and pipes. The air smelled of oil and static. Leora followed closely, her breathing slow, conserving her energy. Every so often, her glow brightened and dimmed with her heartbeat. Elias glanced back often, worried she would falter. But she kept moving. They crawled, climbed, and walked for what felt like hours. Every time they passed a vent, Elias heard footsteps and voices outside security teams searching, scanners humming. Once, a pair of officers stopped right outside a vent near them. "Command says the readings came from this section," Ron muttered. "Maybe it's just faulty wiring," the other replied. "But orders are orders. If we find anything, we report it." Their scanners beeped faintly. Elias froze, pressing himself against the tunnel wall, motioning for Leora to stay still. Her glow dimmed almost completely, her breathing so soft he could barely hear it. The scanners beeped again, then stopped. "Clear," one officer said. They moved on. Elias exhaled slowly, and the two of them continued forward. After nearly 2 hours, they reached the lower decks. The maintenance tunnel ended at a small hatch leading to a storage bay. Elias pushed it open carefully. The wide room beyond was filled with crates, equipment, and unused machinery. It was quiet, for now. They slipped inside, closing the hatch behind them. Leora leaned against a crate, catching her breath. Sweat glistened on her forehead, though her markings flickered brightly again. "You're stronger than you think," Elias said, watching her. She shook her head faintly. "I am only strong because you are here. Alone, I would have fallen long ago." Elias felt a weight in his chest at her words. He gave her a small smile. "Well, you're not alone anymore." Before she could reply, the door at the far end of the storage bay hissed open. Voices echoed in. "Check this area. Sensors picked up interference here." Elias's heart jumped. Quickly, he motioned for Leora to follow him behind a tall stack of crates. They crouched low as the footsteps entered. 2 officers walked in, scanning with their handheld devices. The scanners beeped faintly, stronger near the back of the room. "Something's here," one muttered. Elias tightened his grip on Leora's hand. They had seconds before being discovered. Leora looked at him, her eyes sharp and calm. "Trust me," she whispered. Before Elias could ask what she meant, her markings flared suddenly, brighter than before. The light spilled out from beneath her hood, glowing across the crates. The scanners screamed with noise. The officer shouted, confused. "What is that?" Signal overload. Systems crashing, their devices sparked and went dark. Lights overhead flickered wildly. The officers staggered back, shielding their eyes. "Go," Leora hissed. Elias pulled her hand, and together they sprinted across the bay toward the opposite door. Behind them, the officers shouted, but their coms crackled with static. They burst into the corridor beyond, racing through the halls. Alarms began to blare. Security now knew something was wrong. The chase grew desperate. Every corridor they entered seemed filled with more officers, more scanners. Elias used every shortcut he knew, every maintenance hatch, every narrow tunnel. Still, the station's security net tightened around them. At one point, they ducked into a dark service room. Elias slammed the door shut behind them, chest heaving. Leora leaned against the wall, her glow dimming again from the effort of what she had done. "That trick back there," Elias said between breaths. "You knocked out their scanners?" "How, my people?" "We are tied to energy," she explained weakly. "Our light speaks to systems. It bends them, confuses them, but it costs me much." Elias looked at her, realizing just how much she had already given. "Then save your strength. I'll get us through." He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. She closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. For a moment, the world outside disappeared. The alarms, the footsteps, the hunt hit, all faded. It was just the two of them in the dim service room, bound together by trust. Then Elias straightened. "Come on, we're close to the shuttle bay." The last stretch was the hardest. They could hear announcements echoing through the corridors. "Unregistered intruder on board. Sector 5 under lockdown. All personnel report unusual activity immediately." The station itself was turning against them. Doors sealed behind them. Security teams closed in from every side. At last, They reached the final hall leading to the shuttle bay. The wide corridor stretched ahead, lit by bright overhead lights. At the far end, shuttle doors gleamed like a promise of freedom, but between them and the bay stood a squad of 6 officers. Armed and ready, Elias froze. There was no way around. No more tunnels, no more tricks. Leora stepped forward, her hood falling back. Her markings flared brighter than ever, filling the corridor with shimmering light. The officers shouted, shielding their eyes, but Elias grabbed her arm. "No, you'll burn yourself out." She looked at him, her eyes fierce. "Then let me. If I fall, you must go. Carry the map. Carry the truth." Elias shook his head violently. "No, we go together. Always." He pulled her close, holding her steady. "If you fall, I'll fall with you. But we're not falling today." Her markings pulsed. And for the first time, she smiled through the fear. Together, they ran. The officers tried to block them, but the light was blinding, their sensors failing. Elias pushed forward with all his strength, dragging Leora with him, never letting go. They burst into the shuttle bay, alarms howling, lights flashing. Elias spotted a small transport shuttle at the edge of the hangar. Its doors were open, systems idling. This one. He shouted. They sprinted for it as security poured in behind them. Blaster rifles, non-lethal, but enough to drop them, flashed in the air. Elias ducked, pulling Leora inside the shuttle. He slammed the hatch shut and threw himself into the pilot's seat. "I hope you know how to fly this," Leora murmured weakly. "I don't," Elias admitted, hands flying across the controls. "But I'll figure it out." The shuttle engines roared to life. The hangar doors began to close, but Elias pushed the thrusters hard. The shuttle lifted, shot forward, and blasted through the narrowing gap into open space. Behind them, the station shrank into the void, alarms still echoing faintly across the comms. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He turned to Leora, who sat pale and exhausted but alive, her glow faint but steady. "We made it," he said. She leaned against him, closing her eyes. Together, Elias looked out at the stars. They were fugitives now, hunted by both command and the council. But they had each other, and they carried the truth. And as long as they kept moving, humanity still had a chance. The shuttle drifted through the darkness of space, the stars stretching endlessly in every direction. Elias sat at the controls, hands trembling slightly from exhaustion, adrenaline, and fear. Beside him, Leora leaned back, her glowing markings faint now, dimmed from the strain of the chase. They were free of the station for now. But freedom felt fragile. The council would send ships, and command would be furious. Every system in the sector could become hostile. They were fugitives in a galaxy that had never welcomed them before. Elias glanced at her. "How are you holding up?" Leora gave a weak smile. "I survive. Because you did not give up." Elias shook his head. "We survived together." For a long while, neither spoke. The silence was heavy, but comforting. They had made it this far, against overwhelming odds, relying on trust, courage, and quick thinking. Elias realized, as he looked at her, that the survival of many now rested on their shoulders. Finally, they reached the edge of the sector. From here, communications were less restricted. Elias set the shuttle on autopilot, giving himself a few moments to plan. He powered up the relay system and connected the datapad, which still contained fragments of the map Leora carried. Leora placed her hand on his shoulder. "I can help you complete it," she said, "but it will take effort." "My strength is low," Elias nodded. "Then we work together, step by step." For hours, they mapped the star coordinates from Leora's glowing patterns into the datapad. Her light shifted and pulsed as she projected the hidden shelters into the digital system. The process was painstaking, but Elias was amazed. "This is incredible," he whispered. "No council, no fleet has access to this. Entire shelters, entire colonies saved. Because of you." Leora shook her head. "Because of humans." He looked at her, puzzled. "My people," she explained softly, "have forgotten courage. We rely on rules, councils, and laws. But humans, You act. You take risks. You fight when logic says you cannot. That is why I chose you, why I came to you. You are strong not only in body, but in heart. Elias felt warmth in his chest. Her words, her trust, made every risk worthwhile. Then let's make sure your people and mine survive. No one dies if we can help it. By the time the map was fully digitized, dawn, or at least the simulated dawn of the sector's distant sun, was spreading across their small cockpit window. Elias prepared the shuttle's transmit system. He had encoded the map to broadcast in short bursts to multiple human colonies and freighters. The signal was strong but hidden, difficult to trace back to their exact location. Leora watched him carefully. Once the signal is out, there will be no turning back, she said. I know, Elias replied. But the truth has to be told. People need a chance to survive. With a few precise keystrokes, the transmission began. Data shot out into space, invisible to trackers, carrying the coordinates of hidden shelters and safe zones. For the first time in weeks, Elias felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It's done, he said quietly. Leora's markings flared, brighter than before. Then hope begins, Elias smiled. And humans are good at hope. Suddenly, a warning light blinked on the shuttle console. Multiple contacts had appeared in the Sector Council patrols and human command vessels, all converging. Elias's hands flew across the controls. They've traced us, he muttered. Liora reached out, touching his chest gently. You remain calm, she whispered. Your heart steadies me. Together, we can outmaneuver them. Elias drew a deep breath. Right, let's show them what humans can do. With a combination of evasive maneuvers and sharp turns, they threaded the shuttle through an asteroid field at the edge of the sector. Leora's projections from her glowing patterns interfered with sensors again, confusing their pursuers. Elias pushed the engines harder than he had ever dared. Weaving through tight spaces, dodging blasts of light from distant trackers, every second, the stakes grew higher. But they moved as one him at the controls, guiding the energy around them. Finally, after what felt like hours, they broke free. The pursuers could not follow them into this uncharted area of space. They were alone. Leora exhaled deeply, exhausted but smiling. Elias turned to her. We made it. Yes, she said softly, because humans do not give up, even against impossible odds. He nodded. And because you trusted me, stars stretched endlessly ahead. In the distance, several freighters picked up the hidden signal. Elias watched as messages flashed back confirmation. Coordinates received, plans forming. Slowly, hope spread across the sector. They listen, he whispered. They do, Leora said. Her markings glimmered like a constellation on her skin. Brighter now, as if responding to the hope they carried. Elias reached out and held her hand. You've shown me something, he said. Not just the map, not just the shelters. You've shown me. Humans can be the difference. That we survive where others may surrender. Leora's eyes softened. And I've learned the same. Humans. You remind us what courage is? They sat together, hands clasped, watching the stars pass by. For the first time, Elias felt a sense of peace in the vast emptiness of space. Humanity was not alone, and neither was Lur. Days passed. Using the map, human colonies reached shelters in time. Hidden stations came alive with evacuees. Even parts of Leora's people, inspired by her courage and trust in Elias, began to defy their counsel, assisting humanity quietly. Elias and Leora became fugitives, yes, but symbols of hope. Across the stars, their names spread not as criminals, but as heroes. Humanity had survived once more, not by technology alone, but by heart, courage, and trust. One evening, in the shuttle drifting above a quiet asteroid, Leora rested her head against Elias's chest, not from fear, but from relief. The constant stress, the pursuit, the exhaustion all melted away for a moment. You saved us, she whispered. No, Elias replied, running a hand through her hair gently. We saved each other. And maybe, Humans saved a little more than just ourselves. She smiled faintly, her markings softening, calm and steady. Elias looked out at the stars, endless and bright, and realized something profound. No matter how advanced the galaxy became, no matter the power of fleets, councils, or empires, it was still the human heart that could inspire courage, defy odds, and change destinies. For all their technology, humans were unpredictable, tenacious, hopeful. That was why they survived. And in that infinite stretch of stars, Elias and Leora drifted together, heart steady, carrying the truth, carrying hope, and carrying the knowledge that humanity, in its stubborn brilliance, would endure.